So this here is going to be a video on how to paint Plague Marines. So we did up actually 16 of them in this batch. So you'll see different models in different positions. Pretty much most of the models you may have, we've got in this batch. So hopefully, if we don't have what you have, you can extrapolate from what's here. So just stay tuned. We're pretty happy with the way they turned out. It did take a while. And these are fairly detailed with lots of ornaments and trim and tentacles and everything else. So they do take a bit of time, but stay tuned and we'll show you exactly how we painted them. If you want to see other models or other angles, just scroll right to the end of the video, and that's got a bit of a photo stream where you could kind of see other models and different points of view. Aside from that, just stay tuned. Please feel free to leave a like or subscribe to the channel if you could. That always helps, and otherwise than that, we'll see you in a few minutes. So this here's a video on how to paint the Death Guard Plague Marines. So what you can see here is we've got a standard Plague Marine, and then we've actually got 15 more to do right here. So as you can see, we've got quite a bit of these models to finish, but we're going to paint them all at once in one giant batch. This will be the main model that we paint though. So the first thing we're going to do with this model, and what we did, was we primed him with Mechanicus standard gray spray paint. So that's given us some good coverage all around the model. And now we're ready for our first base coat. So the first color that we're going to use on our model is going to be a base of Death Guard green. And we're just going to put that all over the armor. And it's a very, very watered down layer, so it's very runny, nice thin coat. So we may need a second one as we go. So this is our model now that we finished with the Death Guard green. And we've done all our models so far. What we're going to do next is dry brush on a little bit of highlight layer. And for that, we're going to use some Nurgling green. We're going to take our dry brush and we're just going to move it right over the model, just like so. That'll give us our edge highlights. This is the model now that we finished with our Nurgling green. You can compare it to the way he was, and you can see he's definitely lighter now. As well, he's got an edge highlight on most of the edges of his armor. You can definitely see it more on the back here by his the edge of the panels here. You can see that this one doesn't have any edge highlight at all, and that dry brush gave an outline to the backpack as well as all of the armor plates, which weren't on the previous model. So we're going to do those now, and we'll meet back here in a few more minutes. So for our next color, what we're going to do is start on the trim. So that's going to go Balthasar Gold, which is a good base color here. We're just going to take a little bit, and we're just going to start brushing it on all of the trim on all of the models. Being careful not to go over our green, of course, because we just finished that for now. So we'll do more of this, and we'll meet back here in a few minutes. So this is our model now that we finished with the brass trim. And as you can see, it came out decently. We did both pauldrons, both shin pads, some spots on the backpack, as you can see here, as well as the grenade. There are other models in the squad, and each of them look a little bit different. So I'll show you a couple of them now, but there'll be photos of all of them at the end of the video, so you can just skip ahead. This guy is also lined up here with pauldrons done, and then a few details on the backpack as well. And then this guy as well here, who's got the large mouth on his chest. So we'll zoom in on him when we do that part. He's also got the uncovered head. So that's sort of what they look like there. So the next color we're going to use is some Abaddon black here. And what we're going to do is put that all over the gun casing here. So we're going to do that now, because we're going to end up doing the lighter color over the bands and wrappings after. So we'll do the black first. So we'll do that now, and we'll meet back here in just a few minutes. So with our gun stock now finished, we're going to move on to some metallics. So that'll be the the barrel and the ammo clip, as well as the back, as well as any grenades, any tubing, any branches, anything metallic like that. Chainmail, that'll all go metallic as well. On some of the other models, we also have things like piping. This guy's got a set of grenades, as well as some exposed cabling here, as well as a respirator, another grenade. So we're going to do all of that with some Leadbelcher, and it'll be a fairly thin layer. We'll just paint it on nice and lightly. So our first coat of Leadbelcher is just going to go on nice and light, just like this. As long as we don't go over any of the green or really any of the black. After that, everything else is probably fine. So we'll do the rest of this. Meet back here in a few more minutes. So now the metallics are finished. We're going to move on from there, and we've got some bony processes and some tentacles to do. Now the bony processes you normally would use a Xandri dust for, and that's sort of all these on the shoulder here. But to save time, what I'm going to do is we're going to use a Rakarth flesh base, which is a little bit lighter, but that allows us to use the same color for the bony processes, as well as all the wrappings on the gun, as well as all of the tentacles, as well as all the skulls that are on the shoulder pad, as well as all the other tentacles down around the feet and things like that, the ones coming out the back and the ones coming out the backpack. So all we're going to do is take our Rakarth flesh and just lightly do all of the processes here, just like so. We'll also do the tentacles and the wrappings and things like that. So we'll be back when that's all finished, and we'll go on from there. So this is our model now that the Rakarth flesh is finished. And as you can see, we did the spikes, as well as the tentacle arms, and any tentacles that are coming out of between the armors, as well as any skulls that are lying around as well. Now, depending on which model you have, there may have been more or less work to do. So, for example, with this model, we also had to do the teeth and the head, as well as any skulls that were on the backpack, like so. So the next color we're going to use on our model is going to be a little bit of Rhinox hide. And what we're going to do with that is basically just the rest of the stock here on the front of the gun, as well as any belts like this here. And then anything made of wood or anything made of leather that they may have on them. This will be probably our last color we're going to do before we do a shade. But each of the pistols will have a grip. We'll probably do in brown, as well as anything like this band that's holding the grenades here. We'll do leather, as well this strap for the gun that this guy's holding here. We'll do that in leather as well. And then once again, any belts or anything like that. The hand grip of any guns that aren't held, we'll probably put those brown as well. So this is our model now that we finished with the Rhinox hide. And you can't really see a lot of it here. We did the stock on the barrel. We also did the belt, where it definitely shows up a little bit more obvious there. So we did the belt there. You can see it go around. Some of the places where the brown is more obvious, like I said, is on these models, where we did the gun strap, and then we also did the grenade holders. So now that we're finished with that, we're going to move on to our next color. So the next color we're going to use is going to be a little bit of Bugman's Glow. Now, there's not an obvious spot on this model where we want to put it, but it's for all of the tubing and all of the cabling that we usually have. On this model, we only have 2 spots right in here in between the shoulder pad and the backpack. We have 2, but on a model like this, it's much more obvious because we got this obvious tube right in the front here. And in this model over here, we have this power cable for the arm that goes all the way up to the backpack here. So it's going to be those sort of tubes that we're going to do. And we're going to do them with Bugman's Glow now. And when the Bugman's Glow is finished, it should look like this. So as you can see, we did this model here. We didn't do this one yet. But as you can see, it's just basically added that pink coloring there, as well as on the back. We did the entrail cabling that's there as well. So, and then some up in the backpack. So we'll do those for the rest of the models. We'll meet back here in a few minutes. So with the finishing of the Bugman's Glow, we've now finished with all of our base paints. And what we're going to do now is move on to a shade and start adding some depth and definition to our model. So what we're going to do is take a little bit of Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to water that down almost 1-to-1 with water. And then we're just going to start painting that over all of the armor, all of the brass, all of the black, all of the metallics, pretty much most of the Rakarth flesh, anything that's going to be bone, so all of these horn processes here, we'll get Agrax Earthshade on that, just not the armed tentacles here. Anything that's fleshy tentacles are going to go a redder color, so we will wash that after this. The wrappings and things like that are going to go Agrax Earthshade though. So pretty much like what we're doing here. This is our model now that we finished with our shade. So as you can see, it came out quite nicely. We've got all the details worked now. All the dots and things like that, all the pits in the armor have been filled in. So we finished most of the armor there. So for these mouth and gum type areas, we're going to put a little bit of Mephiston Red on first. It's a little detailed layer. It's well shaded. So the demarcations for the area are very, very clear now, which is why we waited till after we did that first set of shade. And then all we're going to do is just put a little bit of red just in that area like so. Not getting it on the teeth and not getting it on the armor, but filling in the gums. So this is our model now that we finished with the Mephiston Red. And as you can see, that those gums stand out quite nicely now. So now that we're finished with that, we're going to do the rest of the models, and we'll meet back here once we do our next color. So now that we're finished with the Mephiston Red, what we're going to do now is just touch on all of these little boils and pustules that are coming through the armor. So there's one here. These models in particular have a bunch of them all over the place. So they're a little bit easier to see than the ones that are on this model here. But in any case, we're going to do those with a little bit of Ungor flesh. And we're just going to take our detail brush there, get in the light a little bit for you. We're just going to paint, fill in that space and get it nice and colored. So that's all we're going to do there. It's very, very bright, but we are going to put a shade on it in a minute. But we wanted to do the Earthshade first, just to really demarcate where these spots are. So we'll do the rest of those that are on the models, and we'll be back here in a few minutes. So this is our model now, and when you're doing the Ungor flesh, make sure that you get any of the dots that are on the tentacles as well, because we're going to coat these over when we do the tentacles themselves, which is what we're going to do right now. For the tentacles, what we're going to do is add a wash of Carroberg Crimson, and we'll use it right out of the bottle. And all we're going to do is just put it straight on like that. And the red of the Carroberg Crimson will pick up with the intrinsic red of the Rakarth flesh, and you'll get a nice pinkish colored tentacle with varying colors, so it'll look very slimy and definitely very, very warpy or foreign. So we'll do all the rest of the models and we'll be back here in a few minutes. The part we're going to be doing with our Carroberg Crimson is all of those gums that we did earlier. So we'll just be putting some on along the red, just like so. And allowing that to dry, and that'll give us sort of a two-tone approach on all of the gums. So this is our model after we finished with the Carroberg Crimson, and as you can see, there's now a depth to the gums around these teeth, and as well, there's some good examples of some tentacles here. You could see that we've got sort of this contrast paint sort of color where it's lighter in the top, it's poured into the bottoms and in the corners, and create that depth effect. So all these tentacles are now done. We're going to move on to our next color, and our next color is going to be Reikland Fleshshade, and we're going to put that in two places. We're going to do all of the faces that we didn't do before, as well as any spot that we have one of these Ungor flesh pustules that wasn't part of the tentacles that were covered earlier. So we'll put some here and a little bit there, as well as the face. There are two other spots on these models that we're going to do. This model right here has a face, has a head hanging from his belt, so we'll do that in Fleshshade as well. And this model right here has one of these plague grenades that's made out of a face or a head, so we'll do that as well. So we'll do Reikland Fleshshade on all of these. So you don't get nearly the same effect we had earlier. This is much lighter, not enough to stain all the area. You get most of that Reikland Fleshshade coming through, but it is enough to give us some detail on these heads. So this is our model now that the Reikland Fleshshade is dried, and as you can see, all of the details on the face are now apparent. So that sort of brought us to the end of our shades. Now we're just going to add a few highlight colors and sort of bring these models back up a little bit of brightness, and we'll go from there. So the first of our highlight colors are going to be Gorthor Brown. We're just going to use that to dry brush over the hair here. Just like so. Just add a little bit of highlight onto that. Create a two-tone approach just like that. We'll probably do some of the stalks on the weapons as well. Same with the other side. Just like that. So we'll do the rest of the models. We'll be back here in a few minutes. For our next highlight layer, we're going to take a little bit of Thunderhawk blue, and we're just going to go an edge highlight on everything that was painted black, which is mostly the gun stocks. So this is going to be a very edge highlight here. Very light, like so. And the same across the top of the gun here. Along the bottom as well. With the edge highlight of Thunderhawk blue finished, we're going to clean up the weaponry a little bit. So we're going to take a little bit of our normal Leadbelcher again, and just with a detail brush, we're just going to go over all these details that we more or less avoided, because all the shades would have made it a waste of time. And now that they're finished, we can clean them up nicely. So there's how the weapon looks now that we finished with all the detail. So from there we'll move on to the next color. The next step we're going to do is all of the bone work. We're going to do a little bit of that with some Screaming Skull. And we're just going to dry brush that over all of the bone work. Just like that. So this is our model so far. What we're going to do now is one more highlight layer. We're going to put a little bit of brass scorpion, and we're just going to use that as a highlight on the higher parts of the armor, any backpacks. I'm going to dry brush it on any of these points that tends to pick up more of the light. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint just the tongues on these faces here. We're going to use a little bit of Screamer Pink. And with a very detailed brush, I'm just going to hit those tongues just like that. So we'll do the other couple we have here, and we'll move on from there. And several of our models, including the main one we're using, are wearing a loincloth right here. So we're going to put that purple, and what we're going to do is basically just a base coat of Naggaroth Night, followed by a dry brush of Daemonette Hide. In between those, we'll get a nice dark recess. With a bright foreground. So here's our model now that the tabard is finished. And what we're going to do now is take a little bit of Moot green and our detail brush. And we're going to do any of these slime trails here. Because we want them fairly bright, it's going to take a couple of coats. But just like so. So there's a few of them around all of the models. There's a strand right here and a few lobules there. Don't want to hit each one, and then we'll meet back here after those are done. So this is our model now that we finished with the Moot green, and as you can see, we've cleared up pretty much all of the drips, and we've added enough of the slime on all of the spaces that it was visible. So we're going to do the other models and be back here again once all that's done. So with that, our model's pretty much finished. The only things that are still lingering to do are the eyes on this bare-headed model, of which I think we're just going to touch with some Averland Sunset, and the eyes on this model, which I think we're going to touch with some Waystone Green. And I think that'll be pretty much it. We'll rebase them, paint the base, add some flock, clear coat them, and then we'll be back here after all that is completed. The only other thing of note is we're probably going to take a little bit of Nurgle's Rot and put it all over these Moot green slime spots, as well as any of these plague swords. So we'll put some Nurgle's Rot on all of that, and we'll meet back here when all of that's finished. So these are our models now that we're finished. As you can see, we put the Nurgle's Rot on, we put it on all the slime on the backpack on the character on the left, as well as we put it on all of the plague swords, which have the character on the right has. We also put a little bit of Ard Coat on the gums of any of the mouths, and you can also put this on the tentacles, but we didn't. Just creates a slime effect, and sort of adds a little bit more grossness to the model. We also did the base, and we clear coated the model, so they're now ready for the table. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope yours turned out just as nice as these did. And if you're happy with it, please feel free to leave a like or a comment or subscribe to the channel. That really, really helps. Aside from that, stay tuned and you'll see a bunch of photos of the different models in different positions. So you can, if you wanted to see something a little bit better or get a better view at something, you can definitely just stay tuned and it may be on the photo stream at the end. Otherwise than that, we will see you at our next painting video.